A cathedral in 10 minutes. Well, that's going to be some daily drawing practice. But in fact, this is a really good subject and a really good view to practice drawing something that has a bit more detail than a cottage, or certainly a lot more architectural elements than a cottage, but to still do it with a fairly quick and gestural style, really not agonizing over exactness in the way we might when we had more time to draw this much building. So you're watching most of this at real time, 10 minutes, the first 10 minutes at real time, where I basically draw the cathedral, and then the last couple of minutes are double timed when I just do some of the bits around it. So a little slower just for this first section because I am establishing proportions more. And if this looks right, everything I measure off this is going to have a chance of looking right. So one way to center these little windows like this is to start them at the top in the center. So put a dot where the window is going to start. Every time I start them by drawing the straight line down the bottom and going upwards, I invariably either get them off center or they're not straight, or they go too high up as well. And so now I'm going to get these windows done now while I'm doing this. The one thing I did decide to do is to simply black all of these windows. With the pen I've got, with the thickness of the stone supports between the long windows, it's just going to be too hard to do light lines that still show something other than a solid wall of lines. So I've decided that because this is a quick gestural drawing, I have to make some concessions to simplification, and that's going to be the main one. The windows will all be the same level of blackness. One thing we are going to want to try and do is capture the sense of sunlight, bright light on this church. There are very few shadows. And so one thing I do with this drawing, which I really wasn't even thinking of doing, but my sketch markers were just there. I picked up an N4 Copic neutral grey number 4, which is the 5th value in that colour. And I added the shadows on the cathedral with it. And then I used that N4 plus an N2 to do the shadows on the ground in front as well. So now that I've done this section, you'll see that I can now use it to measure off fairly confidently. And so the tempo starts to pick up these two little kind of pinnacle things. I don't know if that's what their real name is or what an architectural pinnacle is if it's not that, but I think it's maybe it's just a high point. Anyway, I'll keep calling them pinnacles until someone corrects me. So now we've got these two sides. I guess they're like small, well, I guess they're side aisles to this side of the transept. The tower is actually not connected to the building. It's on the other side of the nave, and there's actually a relatively short, maybe 5-metre corridor that connects the two. Unfortunately, we weren't able to go in when we were here, so we just enjoyed it from the outside. It's actually very long. We're probably looking at half of the length of the cathedral from this side. It's in the New South Wales town of Goulburn, if anyone's interested. A surprisingly grand scale building, and you don't see most of it from the very public viewing point from the main street, so it does make it quite surprising to discover just how grandiose it is. And so now I'm basically moving out from my starting point. we have what I think is the side aisle to the nave. Not much of it here before it hits the side aisle to the transept, but more of it on the other side of the transept. Just trying to remind myself what's where. And now another little pinnacle thing. As you can see though, although, it's a cathedral, how can I draw this quickly? It's relatively straightforward. I'm surprised, in fact, how slowly I'm drawing it. This tower is probably the only thing I think I would change slightly. I think I just drew it a tiny bit too small. It could have been a couple of more millimetres further to the left, I think, that end wall of it. Oh, I know what I haven't done. I haven't done the buttress. I never did the buttress of that tower, that although it's facing the side that's moving away from us on the left, we can still see it coming out. And I didn't do that. And I didn't do it on the other side either. Actually, I did do it on the other side, but I didn't do it on the left-hand side. And that would give the effect of narrowing the width, and therefore when I went up, I didn't go up as far because I was working off a narrower width, but trying to keep the proportions the same. So I'm just rambling, externally processing, but it all makes sense to me, and it's nice to try and work out why we did things, not just that we did them, but if we can work back, if it's soon enough after we drew, that we can go back to our thinking and we can look at what we do and look at our drawing, then working out why helps just to alert us, possibly, to next time that sort of situation appears again. And hopefully we make a better judgment call as to what we do or don't do. I guess, though, not everyone has the luxury of watching a playback of their drawing. It certainly forces me to critique my own work a lot more, having to watch me draw it again. It's certainly easier to have wisdom about it when you're not having to do it at the same time. So another little pinnacle at the front, and we're getting very close to our 10 minutes now. A little cross at the front there, I think. And there is a buttress down the front. I was doing the buttresses everywhere else, I just forgot on the tower's left side. So now there are some windows on this upper part of the nave. I think these are called clerestory windows. I think that's the word clerestory is related in Latin to the word for heaven, certainly the word celestial. So maybe these were the windows higher to heaven to let heaven's light into the church. I don't know. But as an ex-English teacher, I am always interested in words and meanings and how these things came about. And so now we have the left side of the church finished, and we can now move across, have these leaves to do. Now this tree is much closer to us, so the silhouette edge is actually suggesting individual leaves, and I think even draw one or two leaves individually, because I want to try and give the sense that this is much closer, even in just literally seconds of drawing. So I drew that first line too high, so I've turned it into the top of a fence. It's wonderful being able to take artistic license, isn't it? And then there's another bit of this same tree, so I need to render it the same, but lower down, and that's the part that joins it is actually off the image. So I think about this time I'm starting to think, I could just grab these markers that are right next to me on the desk and give it a bit of contrast in value to really create the effect of sunlight. So look at it now. Now, it is all very white because there's not much except paper and a few lines. So just watch the effect, though, of putting these shadows in. Now, I'm still putting them in a very gestural way. I'm using N4. You can see that when I refill these, I'm not overly fussed at how my fingers look at the end of it. So there's the shadow of a buttress. And I thought I'll whack some of this onto the bush, but not totally. I don't want to colour it in. It's not a colouring book. And also some parts are lighter than others. And so I just leave the hatching for those. And then I think, look, I'm going to get an N0 and just put a bit of ink on for the local colour, for the actual colour of the tiling of the slate roof. And then that reminds me that, I haven't done these last clerestory windows. So I do those in, and then we're pretty much done except for the foreground shadow. But doesn't this really create the sense of now this is a building in strong sunlight? We can't draw light effects. We can only draw shade and shadow effects. That's how we create the sense of light, by removing the light in all the places where it's not, to whatever degree it's not there. And this is a great subject to have a bit of practice doing that with. Just 1 or 2 markers will be enough. And I just put those lines on the paper with the fine liner to help indicate the topography, the slope of the land. I didn't want to give the impression that it's basically a level surface from the church to me. That in fact there's almost a little depression there starting, simply because, well, it's there and it affects the way the shadow looks and adds a bit of interest. I'm not sure whether I can effectively capture the look and the feel of this in the literally minute or 2 that remains, but I thought it was worth giving a go. Got nothing to lose. Soften some of the edges with an N0. And that's it. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope this was interesting and helpful for your daily drawing practice. Why not give it a go? It's not as difficult as it looks. In some ways, it's relatively straightforward. So have a go, have fun. See you next time.